It was a dark, snowy night. The entire world seemed to be wrapped in a blanket of white, with soft snowflakes drifting gently down from the heavens. The moon's faint glow cast long shadows on the ground, and the only sound that could be heard was the soft rustling of the snow falling. Everything was still, yet there was a mysterious feeling in the air, something hidden beneath the silence. At the corner of a small street stood an old house where an elderly woman named Amma Ji lived. Her real name was Fatima, but everyone in the village affectionately called her Amma Ji. This house was old and worn, filled with memories and stories tucked away in every nook and cranny. As soon as the snow began to fall, Amma Ji had hung a thick old cloth over her door to keep out the cold. Inside, a small charcoal stove kept the room warm, and in one corner sat her cozy bed where she spent her evenings with her two grandchildren. Ali, who was 10 years old, and Sana, who was 8, were Amma Ji's beloved companions. They adored her stories, which were always filled with wonder and excitement. Tonight was special. Amma Ji adjusted her glasses, opened an old book, and began to speak. Both children quickly settled beside her, eager to listen. Amma Ji started. Children, the snow you see outside isn't just ordinary snow. It brings with it an old story, a story my grandfather once told me. It's the story of a small village far away, beyond the hills, called Chandpur. Chandpur was a tiny village nestled between dense forests and high mountains. The villagers began their day at sunrise and returned to their homes as soon as the sun set. Every night, a torch was lit in the middle of the village, near a large ancient tree. This torch was a symbol of hope, a sign that all was well in the village. However, one night, the torch wasn't lit, and an uneasy feeling spread throughout the village. People whispered to one another, asking why the torch had not been lit. The elders of the village were worried. The village headman, Lala Deen, instructed everyone to stay indoors. Lala Deen was a wise and respected man. He called his young son, Kareem, to his side and said, "Son, you must find out why the torch wasn't lit tonight. There must be a reason." Kareem was brave and bold. He quickly put on a warm coat, grabbed a torch of his own, and headed toward the old tree. The cold night wind was biting, and the snow stung his face as it fell, but Kareem moved forward determinedly. When he reached the tree, he found it deserted. He held up his torch and tried to light the unlit one, but the wind blew fiercely, and a strange sensation crept over him. He felt as though someone was watching him. Kareem looked around, but all he saw was darkness. Then, a faint voice whispered in his ear, "Kareem, do not light the torch. This night is special, and there is danger." Kareem, startled but not frightened, asked, "Who are you, and why are you stopping me?" The voice replied, "I am an old spirit, bound to this tree. On this snowy night, something unusual is about to happen. If you light the torch, a great misfortune may befall the village." Kareem hesitated, pondering the words. Though skeptical, he decided to heed the warning and extinguish the torch. He returned home and told his father everything. Lala Deen listened carefully and then said, "Son, this is not a small matter. There is something deep and strange at play here." The night passed, and everyone stayed indoors. The next morning, a woman in the village claimed to have seen strangers lurking around the village outskirts during the night. Fear spread like wildfire. Lala Deen gathered everyone and said, "We must face this danger together. We need to find out who these strangers are and why they are roaming near our village." The villagers decided to keep a vigilant watch that night. Snow continued to fall, thick and heavy, making it almost impossible to see far ahead. As the night deepened, Amma Ji continued her story, and Ali and Sana listened with wide eyes. In the story, the snowy scene mirrored the night outside, creating an eerie atmosphere. Kareem and his companions soon discovered that the strangers were actually bandits planning to loot the village, but this was not the end of the tale. As the village prepared to defend itself, something unexpected happened. One of the children, a little girl named Amina, who had always been quiet and shy, stepped forward and said, I have seen them before. They are not here to loot. They are here to find something that belongs to our village." Intrigued, the villagers gathered around Amina. Lala Deen asked, "What do you mean, child? What are they looking for?" Amina hesitated, but then spoke with a voice stronger than anyone had heard from her before. "They are looking for the old map of the hidden treasure that my grandfather once told me about. It's buried somewhere in our village, and they know it." Lala Deen's face grew serious. "A treasure map? How could they know about it? Amina continued. My grandfather said the map was kept by our village elder generations ago, and only the chosen ones knew about it. I overheard the strangers talking about finding the map to claim the treasure for themselves. The entire village buzzed with excitement and fear, a treasure hidden in their midst, and now outsiders were trying to take it from them. The villagers decided to hide the map and form a plan to protect their village from the intruders. Meanwhile, the strangers grew restless, planning to search the village more aggressively. Kareem, knowing the danger, gathered a group of trusted young men to keep watch over the village. They hid in the shadows, ready to defend their homes at any cost. As the night wore on, the snow continued to fall, covering the village in a deeper blanket of white. The cold grew more intense, but the villagers, warmed by their unity and courage, felt a sense of hope. They knew they had to stand together to face the looming danger. Would the village be able to protect itself and its secrets from the strangers? And would the treasure, if it existed, bring fortune or further peril to the villagers?
It was a very cold night. Snow was shining on the ground, and thick snowflakes were falling from the sky. Everywhere was covered with a white blanket. Trees, plants, houses, and roads were all covered in snow. The kids were sitting by their windows at home, wondering how long they would remain locked inside. There was snow everywhere, and no one had the courage to step outside in the cold. In a small alley, there was a tiny house where Rehan, Sarah, and Ali lived. These three were siblings, and their favorite pastime was playing outside, having fun, and finding new adventures. But tonight, on this snowy night, they were all wrapped in their warm blankets, looking at each other, thinking about what to do. Rehan looked out of the window and said, Sarah, Ali, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Sarah, who was just a year younger than Rehan, with her eyes sparkling, replied, Are you thinking about going on an adventure in the snow? Ali, the youngest, jumped with excitement and shouted, Adventure! Yes, I am ready. Rehan smiled. Yes, we will go out in the snow and discover a new world. Who knows? Maybe we'll find a magical place. Sarah thought for a moment and said, But the snow is very cold, and we don't have permission from our parents. Rehan shook his head and said, Sarah, as part of the adventure, we'll sneak out and come back quickly. Sarah and Ali looked at each other, with a spark in their eyes. This was their chance to do something new, something fun and memorable. They all put on their warm clothes, thick jackets, mufflers, hats, and gloves. Then they slowly opened the door and stepped outside. Rehan was in the lead, followed by Sarah and Ali. All of them had a strange smile on their faces, full of excitement and adventure. As soon as they stepped outside, they felt the cold breeze. The cold was biting their faces, but nothing could stop their enthusiasm. Wow, the snow's so beautiful, Sarah said, picking up a handful of snowflakes. Ali shouted loudly, We are the Snow Kings and Snow Queens. And this is our world. But then suddenly they heard a strange sound. It was like the tinkling of a small bell mixed with a faint laugh. They all stopped and looked around. Rehan asked, Did you guys hear that sound too? Sarah nodded. Yes, there's definitely something here. They started walking toward the sound. The further they went, the louder the sound became. The snow was still falling, but it had become lighter. Then suddenly, they saw a small path opening in front of them, where, despite the falling snow, there was a bright and glowing spot. Rehan said, Let's see what this strange place is. When they reached that spot, they saw a small, beautiful house that looked like a dollhouse, resembling a tiny town. Everything in that town was small. Tiny shops, small houses, little streets. And the people there were also very small, as if they had entered a toy land. Sarah said in amazement, "This looks like some magical place." From the tiny house, a large old woman emerged. She looked at the children and smiling said, "Welcome to Snowland." Rayhan, gathering some courage, asked, "Snowland? What kind of place is this?" The old woman replied, "This is a place where only those can come who love snow and are hungry for adventure. You are here because your hearts have room for magic." The children looked at each other with joy. Rayhan asked, "So, are there any fun things for us here?" The old woman laughed and said, "There is fun all around. But you have to be brave and meet the snow fairies. They will show you the way." Suddenly, a group of shining fairies appeared in the sky. Each fairy had glittering wings and held a small glowing wand in her hand. The fairies said, "We will take you on a tour of our city. This is Snowland, and here there is only joy all the time. You just have to keep your hearts open." Rayhan, Sarah and Ali were now very excited. They followed the fairies. The fairies showed them a beautiful snow castle where everything was made of snow. There was a huge slide made entirely of snow. Sarah and Ali screamed with joy, "Yay! A snow slide!" The fairies told them, "This slide will take you to the most beautiful place in Snowland, but you must only enjoy it and not be afraid of anything." Sarah, Ali, and Rayhan were now ready. They all climbed onto the snow slide one by one. And then an amazing journey began. They slid down and flew through the air. Snowflakes were falling all around them. The children were laughing and shouting, "Yay! This is the most fun ride ever." When they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a new world. This was another part of Snowland, where huge snowmen were standing. Each snowman had a small gift. One snowman said, "Your first reward for your adventure." And so, their journey on the snowy night in Snowland was filled with fun and joy. Every moment brought new surprises and new places to discover. They had lots of fun, played with snowballs, and made friends with the snow fairies. But now it was time to return home. The fairies told them, "Now, you must go back to your home. But always remember, you can come back to Snowland anytime. Just keep your heart open and remember the fun." Rayhan, Sarah and Ali returned home. There was a smile on their faces and a sparkle of adventure in their eyes. They were still thinking about how that snowy night in Snowland was the most beautiful night of their lives.
In a small village where peace and quiet reigned, it was nighttime, and everyone was fast asleep in their homes. Outside, the winter had set in, and the snow was gently falling from the sky. Everywhere was covered in a blanket of white, making everything look like a dream. In this snow-covered night, the small houses of the village and the silos were buried in snow. Everything seemed like a beautiful dream. But in this peaceful night, there was something that fascinated everyone: the Snow Queen. It was said that during the night, when the whole world slept, a strange yet beautiful woman, known as the Snow Queen, would emerge from the snow. Her face shone like the moon, her eyes were blue and sparkling, and her hair was as white as snow. She wore a necklace of ice crystals around her neck, and her clothes were made of delicate, shimmering snow, like something out of a dream. She would walk slowly, moving through the village streets. As the queen walked past the small houses of the village, everyone would peek through their windows to catch a glimpse of her. She moved so quietly and calmly that it seemed like she had blended into the air. Every step she took left a magical sparkle on the snow, and people would say she brought with her the freshness and sweetness of snow. The children of the village often wondered what the Snow Queen was like, where she came from, and where she went. Some said she was the queen of the snow spirits who came every night to tell new stories, while others believed she protected the village with her coolness and purity. But no one had ever spoken to her. One night, a little boy named Ali became very curious. He quietly stepped out of his house and started to follow the queen. In the whiteness of the snow, Ali's small footprints intertwined with the queen's, creating a beautiful picture. Ali's heart was beating fast, but he wanted to get closer to the queen. Finally, he gathered his courage and called out, "Who are you?" The queen stopped, smiled gently, and looked at Ali. There was a strange sweetness in her smile. In a soft voice, the queen replied, "I am the Snow Queen. I have come to meet you." Ali asked in surprise, "Me? But why?" The queen said, "Because your heart is pure, just like this snow. Your heart is full of dreams and hope. I come to meet every child who has a pure heart and who dreams." Ali felt happy and said to the queen, "Take me with you." The queen laughed and replied, "No, dear child, you have to stay here. But remember, never let go of your dreams. Dreaming and trying to make those dreams come true is the real victory." And slowly, the queen melted into the snow as if she had never been there. From that day on, Ali never gave up on his dreams. He knew that the Snow Queen visited him every night in his dreams to give him hope and remind him that anything is possible, as long as one dares to dream. And so, the story of the Snow Queen was told every night in the small homes of the village, bringing warmth to the cold of the snow and filling everyone's hearts with hope and dreams.
Part 1. The Mysterious King. This is the story of a king whose unique lifestyle and different thinking made him famous throughout his kingdom. His name was Sultan Zafar, and he was a wise ruler who was loved by his people. Despite his fame and fortune, the king had a peculiar habit. He would only leave his palace at night, spending his days hidden away. When darkness fell, Sultan Zafar would venture out, journeying to a faraway, snow-covered mountain. There he would spend hours in the cold snow, enjoying the freezing winds before returning to his palace before dawn. Part 2. The Secret Observed. No one in the kingdom understood why the king would visit the snowy mountains at night. Intrigued by the mystery, the king's closest advisor, Mirza Asad, decided to uncover the secret. Mirza Asad had been Sultan Zafar's loyal companion for many years, and he couldn't resist the temptation to find out what his king was up to. One night, he discreetly followed the king as he rode his horse out of the palace and towards the mountains. They traveled for miles until they reached a place covered in snow, which glistened like diamonds under the moonlight. Sultan Zafar stopped, took out a small bag, and began to recite prayers. He seemed at peace, completely lost in his connection with the divine. Mirza Asad watched from a distance, his heart touched by what he saw. He realized that the king's nightly journey was not for any earthly purpose, but to connect with his creator in solitude and peace. Part 3. Respect for the king's secret. Mirza Asad returned to the palace, his mind filled with respect and awe for the king's devotion. He decided never to reveal Sultan Zafar's secret to anyone, understanding that it was a sacred bond between the king and his lord. Soon, the people of the kingdom also began to notice the king's unusual habit. But when they saw how Sultan Zafar cared for them, solving their problems and always being present in their time of need, they chose to respect his privacy. They believed he had his reasons for his nightly journeys and continued to love and honor him as their true leader. Part 4. The King's Gift. One day, a great snowstorm hit the kingdom. The cold was unbearable, and many of the poor citizens struggled to stay warm. Sultan Zafar, knowing the difficulties his people were facing, called his ministers and instructed them to distribute warm clothes and blankets throughout the kingdom. He even opened the palace gates, allowing those in need to seek shelter. But the king did something more extraordinary. He gathered the snow from the mountains where he spent his nights and used it to create a special mixture which he believed had healing properties. He ordered his servants to distribute it to those who were ill or suffering. Miraculously, many of the sick began to recover, and the people saw this as a blessing from their king. The secret of his nightly journeys remained safe, but his compassion became legendary. Part 5. A stranger arrives one night. As Sultan Zafar was about to leave for his usual journey, a traveler arrived at the palace gates. He was a mystic, a wise man from a distant land, and he requested to see the king. Sultan Zafar welcomed him with open arms and invited him to share his story. The traveler spoke of his long journey and of a vision he had seen. A vision of a king in a distant land who would save many souls with his wisdom and kindness. Sultan Zafar smiled, understanding that the traveler was talking about him. He shared his secret with the mystic, explaining his nightly trips to the snowy mountains and his spiritual connection with the divine. The mystic listened carefully and then spoke. "O wise king, you have found a unique way to connect with the Almighty, and your compassion for your people is unmatched. But remember, true wisdom is in sharing your light with others." Part 6. The Revelation. Inspired by the mystic's words, Sultan Zafar decided it was time to share his secret with his people. He called a grand assembly and spoke of his journeys to the snow-covered mountains. He explained how he sought solace and strength from the divine, finding peace in the stillness of the night and the purity of the snow. He told them about his prayers, his solitude, and his love for his Creator. The people listened with awe and respect, understanding their king's deep spirituality and his desire to connect with the divine. They realized that his love for them stemmed from his love for the Creator. The revelation only deepened their love and admiration for Sultan Zafar.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a noble prince named Shazor. Prince Shazor's eyes always sparkled with joy, and his heart was full of love for everyone. He loved to travel to every corner of his kingdom, meet people, and help them in any way he could. One day, Prince Shazor thought, why not go beyond my kingdom and see new lands? His father, the king, understood his wish and granted him permission on one condition, that he would always remain pure of heart and never fall into evil deeds. Part 2. Shazor's Journey. Prince Shazor set out on his journey riding his horse. Along the way, he met many people, some kind and some not so kind. One day, he reached a small village where everyone seemed troubled and sad. When he asked what was wrong, he found out that an old woman, who was actually a witch, had been casting spells and ruining everything in the village. Prince Shazor decided to free the village from this trouble. He asked the villagers about the witch's house, but no one dared to tell him. Finally, an elderly man gathered the courage and showed him the way. Part 3. The Witch's First Test. The witch's house was deep inside a dense forest, and the path to it was filled with many dangers and challenges. But Shazor did not lose courage. It was night, the forest was dark, and strange noises echoed all around. Shazor strengthened his heart and kept moving forward. On his way, he saw a strange figure, a large ghostly creature. The creature said to Shazor, "If you want to pass me, answer my riddle." Shazor bravely replied, "Ask me, what is the riddle?" The creature said, "What is that which moves forward but never goes back?" Shazor pondered for a moment and then answered, "Time." The creature laughed loudly and disappeared. Shazor realized he had passed his first test. Part 4, The Witch's House. Shazor finally reached the witch's house. The house looked very old and spooky, surrounded by creepy trees, and the doors were decorated with frightening images of masked demons. Shazor gathered his courage and entered the house. As soon as he stepped inside, he heard a faint rustling sound and saw a small cat passing by. The cat's eyes glowed strangely, scaring Shazor for a moment, but he steadied himself. Part 5, Confronting the Witch. The witch was an old woman with fiery red eyes, holding a strange staff. She looked at Shazor and shouted, "Who are you, and why have you come to my house?" Shazor replied, "I am Prince Shazor, and I have come to drive you away from this village. You have made the lives of the people miserable, and I am here to bring you to justice." The witch laughed loudly and said, "You do not know how powerful I am, but if you want to fight me, you must first pass my third test." Part 6, The Third Test. The witch showed Shazor a strange seal and said, "This seal is the symbol of my power. To break it, you must discover the strength within yourself." Shazor looked at the seal and prayed in his heart for the courage and wisdom to succeed. He thought carefully, and with a pure heart and trust in the Almighty, he touched the seal. As soon as he touched it, the seal broke, and a bright light filled the entire house. The witch screamed loudly, "You have passed my test. You are truly a noble and righteous person. I accept my defeat and will release this village." Part 7, The Gift of Happiness. The witch apologized to Shazor and promised to use her powers to help people from now on. Shazor was happy, and seeing the villagers' joy filled his heart with even more happiness. The villagers honored Shazor as their hero and saluted him. Shazor returned home and told his father about his journey. His father congratulated him and said, "You have turned a difficult task into an easy one with the purity of your heart. Always remember, the true strength lies within you." The end.